Hello and welcome. This video is focused on simple strategies for moving to remote instruction, maintaining a great course while also making it easy for yourself and for your students. We'll be talking about simple tools for online learning, ways of implementing your course outcomes in remote formats, and also straightforward ways of maintaining connections between students. The materials I'm presenting here were collaboratively developed by the entire Writing at Bates staff. I'd also like to thank all of the faculty who attended the live versions of this workshop and who contributed in those conversations to the ideas presented here. First and foremost, keep it simple. New platforms and new technologies involve a learning curve. In a fully online course, it's important to devote time at the beginning of the semester to giving students time to get comfortable with new tools and environments. This takes a lot of time and planning. We're not in a situation in which that's possible. It's important for us to make as much use as possible of technologies that students are already comfortable with so that students can focus on what they need to learn and not on mastering new technologies. This will also mean a lot less time troubleshooting tech issues for you. For example, you might consider sending students links to short pre-recorded lectures and taking questions on those lectures via an email thread, rather than delivering a lecture live via Zoom. Consider the benefits of both synchronous and asynchronous approaches. Synchronous approaches to online learning are real-time, like video chat, for example. Asynchronous approaches have a time delay, like email. In trying to move an existing course online, there's an impulse to try to recreate the classroom experience, which generally means a synchronous approach. But synchronous is not automatically better than asynchronous. Asynchronous approaches are generally lower tech and easier to implement, and also have significant benefits. For example, threaded conversations create a record that everyone in the class can refer back to. In addition, they use less in terms of bandwidth and hardware, which makes it less vital for our students to have access to data, cameras, and microphones. One example of an asynchronous strategy would be to have students engage in a threaded conversation on your course page, to pose questions and respond to others' questions on what they found confusing or interesting in a reading or lecture. This type of interaction is very similar to what our students are used to doing on social media, and so takes advantage of competencies that they already have. Minimize the cognitive load. In any learning environment, there's the inherent difficulty of the skill or concept that we're trying to get across to learners, the intrinsic cognitive load. And then there are the additional demands on learners' cognition that take students' cognitive resources away from the learning task, the extraneous cognitive load. When we rely on simple tools that students are already familiar with, we reduce the extraneous cognitive load and increase students' ability to succeed in the task at hand. Great pedagogy is possible with simple tools that don't require students to navigate new learning environments. For example, you could have students work in a small group to collaborate on a Google Doc to create a definition of a critical course concept that they all agree on. An assignment like this is straightforward and easily understood by students, and again, it depends on online competencies that most of our students already have. Carefully consider the learning outcomes for your course. Rather than thinking, what assignments was I going to do for this course and how will I move them online, consider the original learning outcomes for your course and how they translate to remote learning. Use your learning outcomes to determine what to keep, what to revise, and what to cut. As you move your teaching online, you may want to first adjust your learning outcomes, keeping some, revising others, and discarding some. You could bring students into that discussion of outcomes by using Google Forms to have them rank their progress and their future interest. You could have students engage in reflection and writing to document their learning, to document points of confusion, and to document learning goals that were postponed. This will allow you to see their learning, it will help them develop metacognition, and it will provide them with a record of accomplishment as well as a guide to where they need to fill in gaps later. As you're doing this, recall that there are two types of writing assignments. Informal writing is low-stakes assignments that help students learn by working with material and that give you opportunities to offer formative feedback. Formal writing is high-stakes assignments that allow students to demonstrate what they've learned and that give you opportunities to offer summative, evaluative feedback. Within each of these types, there are many other categories of assignments, depending on the content you want your students to learn, the skills you want your students to develop, and the dispositions you want your students to cultivate. After you determine which outcomes, which content, skills, and dispositions are most important for you and your students, use informal assignments as opportunities for students to generate material for formal assignments. For example, if one of your outcomes is for students to demonstrate the skill of persuasive oral communication, you might use your course page as a site for them to asynchronously discuss readings on this topic. Then students might record persuasive speeches as assignments. Perhaps you originally were going to have students use slides. You could drop this, or you could offer them the option of using blank pages of white paper or index cards to share important facts or statistics or simple illustrations. Students could also create slides in Google Slides, post the slides, and post an accompanying voice memo with instructions for viewers to change slides. If students can't access the course page, they could have asynchronous discussion via email, and they can share persuasive speeches recorded as voice memos. Finally, think about how you can support online connection in a time of social distancing. Ask, what social interactions do I normally encourage in my daily classroom settings? You might encourage connections between yourself and your students, like in lectures and handouts. You might have connections between students and other students in small groups, pairs, and presentations. You may have connections of students with themselves through reflections, homework, and readings. And you may have connections between students and outsiders, like guest lecturers and community partners. The question is, how can I replicate or revise these connective interactions using the online tools we have? And which should I omit? The tools we have are email, Google Slides, Google Hangouts, Google Docs, Zoom, and all of the tools available through our course pages. Silence can be experienced socially through reflection and mindfulness exercises. Ask yourself, what connections can I encourage in real time synchronically? What connections can I encourage asynchronically? And what will I omit because it's too complicated to do either way? Encourage interaction regularly. Give time for responses and leave time to read and respond to or offer feedback on student responses. Ask for one word or one phrase responses. Easy check-ins with students include prompts like, what did you take away from this? How are you feeling about this? What are you still unclear about? In everything you're doing as an educator during this crisis, give yourself time to figure it out. Get feedback from colleagues, and connect with students. Ask your students for their feedback on your session, synchronous or asynchronous, and adapt as necessary. Be clear that you're all in this new space together and that you're learning from each other. Thank you, everyone. Good luck, and please reach out to us. We're available at Writing at Bates for consultations throughout the weeks ahead.